The War Council chamber reeked of stale confidence and overcooked ambition. General Carvoth sat at the head of the massive stone table, his three eyes gleaming with the kind of arrogance that comes from crushing 17 star systems without breaking a sweat. Around him, his officers lounged in their seats, claws tapping against armor, mandibles clicking in what passed for laughter among the Threxian military elite. And there, standing in the center of it all with her hands clasped behind her back, was the human. She was small, laughably so. Carvoth had seen larger prey animals on his home world. Her skin was that peculiar shade of brown that humans came in. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple tie, and she wore nothing more threatening than a gray jumpsuit with some kind of insignia on the shoulder. No weapons, no armor, just that infuriating smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "So," Carvoth rumbled, his voice like gravel being crushed under tank treads, "the Terran Federation sends us this? A negotiator?" He leaned forward, his massive frame casting a shadow across her. "Tell me, little creature, do your people not understand the concept of surrender? Or did they simply run out of actual diplomats and decided to send their cleaning staff instead?" The officers erupted in clicking laughter. Commander Threx, sitting to Carvoth's right, slapped the table with enough force to crack the stone. "Perhaps she is meant to bore us into submission with peace talks." The human, who had introduced herself as Maya Torres, didn't flinch. That smile just widened a fraction. "Oh, I'm not here to negotiate," she said, her voice carrying that strange musical quality human speech had. "I'm here to warn you." Carvoth felt his middle eye twitch. Warn him? Warn him? He had obliterated the Ganath Collective in 6 standard weeks. He had reduced the proud Eumarian Empire to asteroid dust. His fleet numbered over 2,000 warships, each one capable of glassing a planet in under an hour. And this tiny, soft-skinned, defenseless thing was here to warn him? Warn us. He stood, his full height of 12 feet, making the human look even more ridiculous by comparison. You stand in the command center of the most powerful military force in this sector of the galaxy, surrounded by warriors who have bathed in the blood of thousands, and you think you have something to warn us about? Maya tilted her head slightly, like she was considering a mildly interesting puzzle. Well, yes. You see, you're about to make a really, really stupid decision, and I thought it would be polite to give you a heads up before everything goes sideways. The laughter stopped. The clicking ceased. Every eye in the chamber focused on the human with an intensity that would have made most species wet themselves in terror. Maya just stood there, rocking slightly on her heels, that smile never wavering. "You dare," Carvoth whispered, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "To threaten us." "Threaten? No. No, no." Maya waved a hand dismissively. "I'm way past threatening. Threatening is what you do before things go wrong. I'm doing that thing where you try to stop someone from stepping on a landmine because you're a decent person, even though you know they're probably going to step on it anyway because they're too proud to listen." Commander Threx rose from his seat, his crest flaring red with aggression. "General, let me remove this insect from your presence. I will make her death educational for our troops." "Please sit down, Commander." Maya's voice didn't rise, didn't sharpen, but something in her tone made Threx pause mid-step. "You're going to want to hear this part." Carvoth held up a hand, stopping his officer. Not because he was intimidated, absolutely not, but because there was something in the human's eyes, something that didn't match the casual tone and the infuriating smile, and he wanted to understand what game she was playing before he crushed her skull. "Speak then," he commanded. "Entertain us with your warning before I decide whether to kill you quickly or slowly." Maya's smile finally faded, replaced by an expression of what might have been genuine regret. "You're planning to invade the Terran colony on Epsilon 7. Your fleet is already in position. You think it's going to be easy because our military presence there is minimal. Just 3 ships in orbit and maybe 2,000 ground personnel. You've run the numbers, checked the defenses, and you figure you can take the whole planet in 48 hours with minimal losses." She was right. Karvoth felt his confidence waver for just a moment. Those were the exact parameters of Operation Crimson Hammer. Information that should have been locked behind 7 layers of military encryption. "You have spies," he said flatly. "Amusing, but ultimately pointless. Yes, we will take Epsilon 7. We will take it, and then we will use it as a staging ground to push into the heart of your Federation. What of it?" "Well, here's the thing." Maya reached into her pocket, and instantly 20 weapons were aimed at her head. She moved slowly, carefully, pulling out what looked like a small data pad. "You've done your homework on our military assets. Very thorough. But you forgot to check one tiny, insignificant detail." She tapped the screen, and a hologram flickered to life above the device. It showed a simple demographic breakdown of Epsilon 7's population. Epsilon 7 is a colony world. Civilian population of about 50,000. Mostly families. Agricultural development. Some light manufacturing. A few research stations. Maya's voice had gone flat now. Professional. "But here's what your intelligence didn't tell you. Because, frankly, why would it matter to a military assessment? 40% of that population is children. 20,000 kids, General. Ages ranging from newborn to 17 standard years." Karvoth blinked. And you really, really don't want to attack a human colony where 40% of the population is children. The chamber fell silent. Karvoth looked at his officers. Several of them were exchanging confused glances. Commander Threx's crest had faded from red to a puzzled yellow. "Let me understand your logic," Karvoth said slowly, sitting back down in his throne. "You believe that having younglings present will somehow deter us? That we will take pity on them? Little human, we are warriors. We have destroyed entire civilian populations. The presence of children is irrelevant. If anything, it makes your species look weaker, hiding behind the young." "Oh, I'm not worried about you hurting the kids," Maya said, and her smile was back. But this time it looked sad, almost pitying. "I'm worried about what's going to happen when you threaten them. We are wasting time." Karvoth slammed his fist on the table. "I have heard your warning. I am not impressed. You may return to your Federation and tell them that Epsilon 7 will fall within 2 days. Children or no children. Now leave, before I change my mind about letting you live." Maya didn't move. She just stood there, looking at him with those strange human eyes, and said quietly, "You've never fought humans when their kids are in danger, have you? We have fought humans across 3 systems. Your soldiers die like any others." "Soldiers, sure. Professional military, rules of engagement, command structure, all that official stuff." She nodded. "But you've never seen what happens when you threaten human children around human civilians. See? That's when things get weird. That's when we stop being rational. That's when millions of years of evolution start making really loud suggestions about priorities." She pulled up another image on her datapad. This one showed a human woman, completely unremarkable, standing in what looked like a residential area. "This is Emma Grant. She's a botanist on Epsilon 7, specializes in nitrogen-fixing crops. By all accounts, a lovely person. Gentle, kind, wouldn't hurt a fly. The image shifted. The same woman, but now her face was covered in blue-gray blood, her hands wrapped around the throat of what appeared to be a Kresh raider, one of the most feared pirate species in the sector. The Kresh was dead, its neck bent at an impossible angle. This picture was taken 3 years ago when a Kresh raiding party tried to board a civilian transport she was on. They made the mistake of grabbing a 5-year-old girl. Emma Grant, the gentle botanist, killed 4 armed Kresh pirates with her bare hands before security could respond. The medical examiner's report said one of them had his spine literally torn out. Carvoth leaned forward despite himself. Maya swiped to another image. An elderly human male this time, gray-haired and smiling, in what looked like a family photo. This is Robert Chen, retired accountant, lives on Epsilon 7 with his daughter and grandchildren. Hobbies include gardening and model spacecraft building. The next image showed the same man standing over the bodies of 6 Vex soldiers, a bloody farming tool in his hands. When Vex mercenaries raided his settlement looking for supplies, they tried to use his grandson as a hostage. Robert Chen was 73 years old at the time. The Vex soldiers were combat veterans in full tactical armor. It took medical examiners 4 hours to identify all the body parts. She kept swiping. More images. More unremarkable humans. More dead aliens. Sarah Okonkwo, schoolteacher, killed 9 Threxian scouts with a kitchen knife when they approached her classroom. David Kowalski, construction worker, used a mining laser to cut apart an entire pirate boarding party that tried to take children hostage at a spaceport. Yuki Tanaka, medical doctor, somehow convinced an armed militia to surrender by describing in clinical detail what she would do to them if they didn't leave the pediatric ward. They left, then filed a formal complaint with their government about human biological warfare. The images kept coming. Civilians, ordinary people, and piles of dead soldiers. You see the pattern yet, General? Maya's voice was quiet now. These aren't trained soldiers. These are people who grew flowers and taught algebra and fixed plumbing. But every single one of them had one thing in common. Someone threatened a child near them, and they stopped being civilized humans and became something much older. Something that remembers when our ancestors had to protect their young from things with bigger teeth and sharper claws. Commander Threx shifted uncomfortably in his seat. These are isolated incidents, anecdotes. Are they? Maya pulled up a final document. This is a classified study by the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. They analyzed every conflict involving human populations over the last 30 years. Want to guess what the single most dangerous variable was? Not human military strength, not technological advantage. It was whether or not children were present in the conflict zone. Casualty rates for attacking forces increased by 300% when human civilians believed children were in danger. And get this, most of those casualties were inflicted by untrained civilians using improvised weapons. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of every officer present. Your intelligence was right about one thing. Epsilon 7's military presence is minimal. You could overwhelm it easily. But you know what Epsilon 7 has a lot of? Parents, grandparents, teachers, neighbors, 20,000 kids, and about 30,000 adults who have spent years keeping those kids safe, fed, and happy. Your point? Carvoth kept his voice level, but something cold was forming in his chest. My point is that you're not planning to invade a lightly defended colony. You're planning to walk into a planet full of humans who will perceive your attack as a direct threat to children they've been protecting for years. And when that happens, when you push that button in the human brain that says, "Protect the young at all costs," weird things start happening. She began counting on her fingers. First, they stop caring about their own safety. Self-preservation goes right out the window. Second, they get creative in ways that would make your weapons engineers weep. Third, and this is the really important one, they don't stop. You can't negotiate with them, can't reason with them, can't frighten them off. They will keep coming until either you're dead or they are. Maya looked directly at Karvoth. "You've conquered 17 star systems, General. Congratulations. But I'm willing to bet none of those systems had significant human populations. And if they did, those populations weren't primarily composed of families with children. Am I wrong?" The silence in the chamber was absolute. Karvoth ran through his military campaigns in his head. The Ganeth were an insectoid species with communal breeding. The Amarians were cloned soldiers. The Vex had hatching facilities. None of them had the same kind of familial structure as humans. "You are attempting to use fear," he said finally. "It will not work." "I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to save you." Maya's voice had gone soft again. "Because here's what's going to happen. If you attack Epsilon 7, your initial assault will probably succeed. You'll take out the military installations, establish orbital control, maybe even land your ground forces without too much resistance, and you'll think you've won." She paused, and the smile that crossed her face was genuinely sad now. "Then some parent is going to see your soldiers near a school, or a playground, or a home, and that parent is going to make a decision. And then another parent will make the same decision, and another. And within hours, you're not going to be fighting an army. You're going to be fighting a planetary population that has decided your existence is incompatible with their children's safety." "We are trained warriors," Threx interjected. "They are civilians. Trained warriors have rules, training, doctrine, limits." Maya shook her head. "Humans protecting their children don't have any of that. They have millions of years of evolution screaming at them to eliminate the threat by any means necessary. Do you know what improvised explosive devices are, Commander? Because the colonists on Epsilon 7 have access to agricultural chemicals, mining equipment, and a really strong motivation to figure out how to weaponize them." She pulled up one more file. "This is a report from the Kresh Hegemony, filed after their attempted raid on the human colony on New Perth. They sent 200 elite commandos to take the settlement. Highly trained, heavily armed professional soldiers. Want to guess how many made it back?" The room waited. 7. 7 soldiers made it back to their ship. The rest were killed by civilians using farming equipment, homemade explosives, and, in one case, a swarm of genetically modified bees that a local beekeeper somehow convinced to attack anything wearing Kresh pheromones. The after-action report concluded that attacking human populations with children present was tactically unsound and likely to result in complete unit loss. The Kresh Hegemony issued a formal doctrine update specifically advising against it. Karvoth felt the cold in his chest spread to his limbs. He looked at his officers. Several of them looked uncertain now, their earlier confidence shaken. "You are bluffing," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "I really wish I was." Maya deactivated her data pad and slipped it back into her pocket. "Look, General, I get it. You're a conqueror. You've built your reputation on being unstoppable. Backing down now, especially from a warning delivered by one unarmed human, it looks weak. Your officers will question your courage. Your enemies will smell blood in the water. She took a step closer to his throne, and somehow, despite the massive difference in their sizes, it felt like she was looking down at him. But I need you to understand something. If you attack Epsilon 7, even if you win, even if you manage to subdue the population eventually, the cost will be devastating. You'll lose thousands of soldiers. Your fleet will take damage. Your momentum will stall, and word will spread. Every other human colony, every Terran military installation, they'll all know exactly what happened. They'll know that threatening human children turns ordinary civilians into insurgents who don't quit. And then what? She spread her hands. Then you'll have to fight that on every human world you try to take. Not just soldiers following orders, not just defense forces protecting territory, but entire populations willing to die, willing to use any method necessary, willing to keep fighting long after a rational military force would have surrendered, because you made them think their kids were in danger. Carvoth stared at the small human standing before his throne. Part of him wanted to laugh, to dismiss her words as desperate propaganda. But another part, the part that had kept him alive through decades of warfare, was screaming warnings. "What do you suggest, then?" he asked quietly. "That we simply abandon our expansion? That we cower before the Terran Federation because you tell scary stories? I suggest you find literally any other target. Attack our military bases. Hit our supply lines. Strike at our industrial worlds. Hell, if you want to pick a fight with Earth itself, go for it. At least there you'd be facing professional soldiers with rules of engagement." Maya's expression hardened. "But leave the colony worlds with high child populations alone. Not because we'll beat you, we might not, but because the cost of victory will destroy your army from the inside out. Your soldiers will have nightmares about what they had to do. Your officers will struggle to maintain morale. And your reputation will shift from conquering general to the idiot who picked a fight with human parents and lost half his fleet doing it." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You have 48 hours before your fleet reaches attack position. I've delivered my warning. What you do with it is up to you. But I want you to remember one thing, General Carvoth." She looked back at him, and for just a moment, he saw something in her eyes that made his blood run cold. "I'm not just a negotiator. I'm a mother. My daughter lives on Epsilon 7. She's 8 years old, loves dinosaurs and painting, and she has no idea that your fleet is coming. And if you attack that planet, if your soldiers get anywhere near my child, or any of the other 20,000 children there, I will personally make it my life's mission to ensure you regret it. Not through military action, not through official channels, but through every creative, vicious, utterly irrational method that a mother's brain can come up with when someone threatens her kid." The smile came back, but this time there was nothing friendly about it. "So please, for both our sakes, be smart. Attack somewhere else, because I really, really don't want to find out what I'm capable of when someone makes me think my daughter is in danger. And you really don't want to find out either." Then she was gone, the door sliding shut behind her with a quiet hiss. The War Council sat in silence for nearly a full minute. Finally, Commander Threx cleared his throat. "She is bluffing, General. One human female, using psychological tactics. We cannot allow such transparent manipulation to affect our strategic planning." "Show me the casualty reports," Carvoth said quietly. "General?" The files she referenced. The Kresh raid on New Perth. The Vex mercenary incident. All of it. I want independent verification. 3 hours later, Karvoth sat alone in his quarters, reading through intelligence reports his staff had pulled from various sources. The human woman hadn't been lying. If anything, she had understated the problem. Every documented conflict between armed forces and human civilian populations, where children were present, showed the same pattern. Disproportionate casualties, unexpected resistance, psychological trauma among surviving attackers. One report, from a Vex commander who had survived an encounter with human colonists, stood out. They should have run. Any rational species would have evacuated, but they stayed, they fought, and they did things that will haunt my soldiers for the rest of their lives. We thought we were attacking a civilian settlement. We were wrong. We were attacking parents. There is a difference. Karvoth pulled up the tactical display of Epsilon 7. Such an easy target. Perfect location. Minimal defenses. Everything about it screamed opportunity, except for those 20,000 children and the 30,000 adults who cared about them. He thought about Maya Torres, standing in his War Council chamber, delivering her warning with that infuriating smile. Not threatening, not posturing, just stating facts and trusting him to be smart enough to understand the implications. His hand hovered over the command terminal. One order, and Operation Crimson Hammer would proceed as planned. His reputation would remain intact. His officers would respect his boldness. And thousands of his soldiers would die fighting civilians who had stopped caring about their own survival. With a growl of frustration, Karvoth pulled up an alternative target list. There, a military depot 3 systems away. Heavily defended, but by actual soldiers who would fight by predictable rules and surrender when defeat was inevitable. It would be harder. It would take longer. But his soldiers would come home alive, and they wouldn't wake up screaming about what they had to do to unarmed civilians who refused to stop fighting. He keyed in the course change, committing the fleet to the new target. Maybe the human woman had been bluffing. Maybe it would have been fine. But Karvoth hadn't survived this long by taking unnecessary risks. And something in Maya Torres's eyes, that absolutely calm certainty, told him that attacking Epsilon 7 would be the kind of mistake you only got to make once. Besides, there would be other colonies, other opportunities. Just maybe ones with fewer children. The message reached Maya Torres 6 hours after she had left the Threxian command ship. She was back aboard the small diplomatic shuttle, trying to convince herself that she had done enough, said the right things, pushed the right buttons. Her hands were shaking. They had been shaking since she walked out of that War Council chamber, but she had kept them behind her back, where the aliens couldn't see. Her tablet chimed. Fleet repositioning detected. Threxian Armada adjusting course. New vector suggests target change. Maya let out a breath she didn't know she had been holding. Then she laughed, a slightly hysterical sound in the empty shuttle. It worked. Holy hell, it actually worked. But the relief lasted exactly 43 seconds before a priority alert screamed across her console. Emergency beacon. Epsilon 7. Multiple signals. Unidentified vessels entering system. Her blood turned to ice. The communication channel crackled to life, and a voice she recognized instantly came through. Captain Marcus Webb, commander of the TFS Valiant, one of the 3 defense ships stationed at Epsilon 7. Maya, if you're receiving this, we have a situation. Big one. Fleet just dropped out of slip space, but it's not Threxian. Repeat, not Threxian. These are Kresh hegemony ships, 60-plus vessels, and they're broadcasting demands for complete surrender. They know about your meeting with Karvoth. They know the Threxians backed off, and they seem to think that makes us vulnerable. Maya's mind raced. The Kresh. Of course. They would have been monitoring Threxian fleet movements, looking for opportunities. They must have assumed that if the mighty General Carvoth was avoiding Epsilon 7, it meant the colony had some kind of hidden defense system, some secret weapon. So they were calling the bluff. Captain Webb, this is Torres. What's your tactical assessment? The response took 5 seconds, the delay from distance and encryption. Honestly, we're screwed. 3 ships against 60. Civilian evacuation would take days we don't have. They're demanding we stand down in 20 minutes, or they start orbital bombardment. Maya, they specifically mentioned the children. They think that's our weak point. They think if they threaten the kids, we'll just roll over. Maya closed her eyes. The creche didn't understand. They had read the reports about New Perth, but they had come to exactly the wrong conclusion. They thought humans were weak when their children were threatened, that the fear would make them compliant. They had no idea what they had just walked into. Captain, I need you to do something that's going to sound insane. I'm listening. Broadcast their demands planet-wide. Make sure every single colonist knows that the creche are threatening their children. Then wait. There was a longer pause this time. Maya, with all due respect, are you out of your mind? If we tell 30,000 civilians that someone's threatening their kids, we'll have chaos. No. Maya opened her eyes, and that smile, the one that had unsettled General Carvoth, spread across her face. You'll have something much worse. For the creche, anyway. Trust me on this, Marcus. I just spent 3 hours convincing the Threxians not to attack Epsilon 7 because of what would happen if they threatened the colony's children. The creche just volunteered to provide a demonstration. On the surface of Epsilon 7, the broadcast played across every screen, every speaker, every communication device simultaneously. Emma Grant was in her greenhouse, checking on her nitrogen-fixing bacteria cultures when the message interrupted her music. She listened, her expression unchanging, as the creche demands echoed through the space. Surrender within 20 minutes. Compliance or bombardment. Special emphasis on the vulnerability of the young population. She looked down at her hands, dirt under her fingernails, calluses from years of working the soil. Gentle hands. Botanist hands. Then she walked to her equipment locker and pulled out the agricultural sprayer she had modified last year, the one that could disperse nutrient solution across an entire field in minutes. She wondered how it would work with the industrial solvent from the mining operation down the road, the stuff that was toxic to creche respiratory systems. Robert Chen was teaching his grandson how to build model spacecraft when the broadcast came through. The 7-year-old looked up at him with worried eyes. "Grandpa, what does bombardment mean?" Robert smiled at the boy, ruffled his hair, and said gently, "It means some very stupid people are about to learn an important lesson. Go find your mother. Tell her to take you to the shelter. Grandpa has some work to do." After his grandson left, Robert went to his workshop. He had been an accountant, yes, but before that, he had been a combat engineer in the Terran Marines. 50 years ago, but some skills you never forgot. He looked at his collection of power tools, his stockpile of fuel cells, his very extensive knowledge of structural weak points. Then he started making calls. David Kowalski was supervising a construction project when the message played. The mining laser he had been calibrating suddenly seemed very interesting from a different perspective. Mining lasers were designed to cut through solid rock. Creche assault armor was considerably softer than solid rock. He pulled up the schematics for the colony's power grid on his tablet, calculating how much energy he could divert without causing a complete blackout. Quite a lot, it turned out. More than enough. Sarah Okonkwo was reading to her class, 26 children aged 6 to 9, when the school's PA system delivered the creche ultimatum. She finished the sentence she was reading, closed the book calmly, and smiled at her students. "All right, everyone. We're going to play a special game today. It's called Go to the Deep Shelter and Stay Very Quiet. The first one to the shelter gets extra dessert at lunch. Ready? Go!" As the children hurried out, giggling despite their nervousness, Sarah walked to her desk. She opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the case she kept there. Inside was a kitchen knife, perfectly balanced, sharp enough to split a hair. She had sworn she would never need it again after the incident with the Threxian scouts. Apparently, she had been wrong. All across Epsilon 7, similar scenes played out. A medical doctor checking her emergency supplies and realizing she knew more about alien biology than most soldiers, and that knowledge could be weaponized. A retired pilot looking at the civilian transport ships in the hangar and calculating how much damage a ship could do if someone was willing to ram it into something important. A chef staring at his industrial ovens and remembering that compressed gas cylinders made excellent projectiles. 30,000 people, most of whom had never fired a weapon in anger, all suddenly making the same calculation. How do I protect the children? What resources do I have? What am I willing to do? The answer to the last question, for virtually every single one of them, was simple. Anything. Everything. Whatever it takes. Commander Vexillar of the Creche Hegemony watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The 3 Terran defense ships were maintaining position, but not engaging. The colony below was silent. 20 minutes had passed since his ultimatum. "Sir, receiving transmission from the surface." "Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. Male, middle-aged, wearing what looked like civilian clothing. "This is Governor Chen of Epsilon 7 Colony. We've received your demands." Vexillar felt his mandibles click in pleasure. Chen. That was the name on the colony records. "Then you understand your situation, Governor. Surrender, and your people will be treated fairly. Resist, and we will be forced to demonstrate our resolve. We are particularly concerned about the safety of your younger population. It would be tragic if they came to harm." The governor's expression didn't change. "Let me make sure I understand correctly. You're threatening our children? We are simply noting that they are vulnerable and that their safety depends on your cooperation." "I see." The governor nodded slowly. "Commander, I'm going to give you some advice. It's the same advice one of our diplomats gave to the Threxian general who was planning to attack us. Leave. Right now. Go literally anywhere else. Because if you stay, if you follow through on this threat, you're going to regret it." Vexillar's mandibles spread in what passed for a smile among his species. "Is that meant to frighten me, Governor? You have no fleet, no significant military presence. What exactly are you going to do?" "Me? Personally? Probably not much. I'm 73 years old, and my combat days are behind me." Governor Chen leaned forward slightly. "But there are about 30,000 other people on this planet who just heard you threaten their kids. So it's not really about what I'm going to do, Commander. It's about what they're going to do. And honestly, I have no idea. That's what should scare you. You're bluffing." "I really wish I was." The governor's smile was sad. "But I've lived among humans long enough to know what happens when you push certain buttons. You just push the biggest one. So I'm giving you 60 seconds to start your retreat. After that, I can't guarantee your safety, and I'm not sure I'd want to." Vexillar cut the transmission. "Foolish. Prepare to demonstrate our power. Target the primary school in the capital. Low yield, just enough to make our point." Sir, I'm detecting unusual activity on the surface. Multiple power signatures, chemical reactions, movement patterns. Civilian panic. Ignore it. Fire when ready. The weapons officer triggered the bombardment sequence. A lance of plasma shot down from the Kresh flagship, aimed precisely at the coordinates of the school building. It never reached the target. Halfway through the atmosphere, the plasma bolt struck something, a cloud of some kind, and dispersed harmlessly across the sky in a spectacular but ultimately impotent light show. What just happened? Vexillar demanded. Unknown substance in the atmosphere, sir. Analyzing. It appears to be… Wait, that's impossible. It's an aerosol suspension of fire, suppressing chemicals mixed with metallic particles. It's creating a dispersal field. Where did it come from? Surface launch. Multiple points. Sir, I'm reading hundreds of additional launches. They're blanketing the entire colony with this stuff. Vexillar stared at his display. In less than 5 minutes, the colonists had created an improvised planetary defense shield using agricultural sprayers and chemicals that shouldn't have been able to do what they were doing. Fine. Land-ground forces. Secure the primary population centers. If we can't bombard them, we'll take them by force. The first troop transport descended toward the capital city. It made it to 500 meters before someone, later identified as a construction foreman named David Kowalski, hit it with a mining laser that had been overcharged to approximately 300% of its recommended power output. The transport exploded in a fireball that could be seen from orbit. Sir, we've lost Transport 12. What hit it? A mining laser, sir. A civilian mining laser. They modified it somehow. Vexillar felt the first whisper of doubt. Send down multiple transports. Overwhelm their defenses. 15 transports launched. 14 made it to the ground. The 15th was hit by what appeared to be a civilian cargo shuttle that someone had packed with explosives and remotely piloted straight into its flight path. The 14 that landed deployed their troops quickly. 200 Kresh soldiers in full combat armor, trained and ready. They moved toward the nearest residential area with professional efficiency. That's when things got weird. The first squad rounded a corner and found themselves facing Emma Grant. She was holding what looked like a garden sprayer. Before the squad leader could order her to stand down, she triggered the device. The spray that hit the Kresh soldiers wasn't water. It was a mixture of industrial solvent and a compound Emma had synthesized from her bacteria cultures. It ate through Kresh respiratory filters in seconds. The entire squad dropped, choking, as Emma calmly walked past them toward the next group. Another squad tried to secure what intelligence had identified as a civilian workshop. They breached the door and found themselves in a room full of what appeared to be model spacecraft. Robert Chen was waiting for them. What happened next was later described by the one surviving member of that squad as geometrically improbable and biomechanically horrifying. The fuel cells in those model spacecraft were very small and very volatile when used correctly. Robert Chen had stopped using them correctly about an hour ago. A third unit attempted to establish a command post in an open plaza. They were setting up their equipment when they realized the plaza wasn't empty. There were people there, civilians, dozens of them, just standing, watching, not running, not attacking, just standing there with expressions that made the Kresh commander's instincts scream warnings. Clear the area, he ordered. Non-lethal force. Drive them back. His soldiers advanced. Shock batons ready. The civilians didn't move. Then, when the Kresh were within 10 meters, they did move. All at once. With tools and makeshift weapons and a level of coordination that suggested this had been planned. It wasn't planned. It was just what happened when you put 30,000 humans in a situation where they believed their children were in danger. They stopped being individuals and became something older, something that remembered when humans had to hunt in packs and protect their young from predators. The Kresh soldiers were predators. The humans were parents. There's a difference. From orbit, Commander Vexillar watched his tactical display with growing horror. Red icons, indicating casualties, were appearing faster than he could track. Entire squads going offline, transport ships being disabled by improvised weapons, and the distress calls, the screaming over the communication channels. They're not fighting like civilians! Where are they getting these weapons? Sir, they've breached our perimeter using a commandeered construction vehicle. Medical emergency. We have soldiers down. They used some kind of acid. No, wait. It's a base. No, I don't know what it is. It's eating through armor. Captain Webb, watching from the TFS Valiant, felt sick. Maya, we need to stop this. This is a massacre. Is it? Maya's voice came back, hard and cold. Let me ask you something, Marcus. How many colonists have died? Webb checked his sensors. According to my readings, 3. All accidental, caught in crossfire. And how many Kresh? The number was climbing. Already over 100. Maybe more. It was hard to get accurate counts with the chaos on the surface. Maya, this isn't war. I don't even know what this is. This is what happens when you threaten human children around human parents, Marcus. I tried to warn them. I tried to warn Karvoth. But the Kresh thought we were weak, thought fear would make us surrender. They didn't understand that fear doesn't make humans weak. It makes us dangerous. On the surface, the fighting continued. Sarah Okonkwo moved through the chaos with surgical precision, her knife finding weak points in Kresh armor, with the kind of anatomical knowledge only a teacher who used to be a trauma surgeon would have. David Kowalski had linked 3 mining lasers together into a perimeter defense that was keeping an entire company of Kresh soldiers pinned down. Emma Grant's chemical concoctions were proving more effective than military-grade weapons. And everywhere, ordinary people were doing extraordinary things. A shopkeeper using her knowledge of electronics to hack Kresh communication systems. A musician using acoustic principles to create sonic weapons from amplification equipment. A librarian who apparently knew 17 different languages, including Kresh, broadcasting misinformation that was sowing chaos among the enemy command structure. Commander Vexillar made his decision. All units, withdraw. Immediate evacuation. We're leaving. Sir, we still have superior numbers. Numbers don't matter if our soldiers are too terrified to fight. Vexillar looked at his tactical display, at the impossible, irrational resistance they were facing. The Threxians were right to avoid this place. Retreat now, before we lose the entire ground force. The Kresh withdrawal was chaotic and costly. As they pulled back, colonists pursued them, not with military discipline, but with the relentless determination of people protecting their homes. By the time the last transport lifted off, Kresh casualties had topped 300. The fleet jumped to slip space without even pretending dignity, running from a civilian colony like it was a military stronghold. Silence fell over Epsilon 7. Slowly, people emerged from shelters. Parents found their children, whole and safe. The elderly checked on neighbors. Medical personnel, both professional and improvised, began treating the wounded. Emma Grant stood in the middle of her greenhouse, looking at her hands. They were shaking now. During the fight, they had been steady. Now that it was over, the reality of what she had done was settling in. She had killed people, multiple people, with chemistry and a garden sprayer. She sat down heavily among her plants and tried not to throw up. Robert Chen found his grandson and daughter waiting for him in the shelter. The boy ran to him, hugged him tight. Robert hugged back, and his hands were shaking too. The things he had done. The knowledge that he was still capable of such violence. It had been necessary, he knew that. But necessary didn't make it easy. All across the colony, similar scenes played out. The adrenaline wearing off. The shock setting in. People who had become something primal and terrifying for a few hours were slowly remembering how to be civilized humans again. Governor Chen stood in the emergency command center looking at the casualty reports. 3 colonists dead, 17 injured. Creche losses, 300 confirmed dead. Unknown numbers wounded. Property damage, surprisingly minimal. "We held," Captain Webb said quietly, standing beside him. "Against 60 warships and 2,000 soldiers. We held. We did more than hold, Marcus. We won. And we terrified them so badly, they'll probably file a report recommending no one ever attack a human colony with children again." The governor sighed. Is that something to be proud of? Is it something to be ashamed of? I don't know. We protected our children. We did what we had to do. But the cost, the things people had to become. Governor Chen shook his head. Maya Torres told the Threxians that attacking us would destroy them from the inside out. I think I understand now what she meant. Winning this way, it costs something. It costs part of your soul. 3 days later, Maya Torres stood before the Galactic Council, broadcasting her report across known space. Her smile was gone. Her voice was flat, professional, and absolutely merciless. Members of the Council, I submit for your records the complete documentation of the Creche Hegemony's attack on Epsilon 7 colony. Video evidence, casualty reports, tactical analysis. I want you to see exactly what happened when the Creche ignored our warnings and threatened a human population with a high concentration of children. The footage played. Alien counselors watched in silence as civilians became warriors, as gentle people did terrible things, as an entire colony transformed into something that defied military logic. Let me be absolutely clear, Maya continued. This is not a threat. This is not propaganda. This is a warning based on documented fact. If you attack human colonies where children are present, this is what you will face. Not soldiers, not defense systems, but parents, teachers, neighbors, ordinary people who will use any method available to protect those children. They will not surrender. They will not negotiate. They will fight until you leave, or they die. And they are far more creative and far more dangerous than any military force you've encountered. She looked directly at the camera, at the representatives from hundreds of species. The Threxian Empire received this warning and chose wisely. The Creche hegemony ignored it and paid the price. I am now extending this warning to everyone. If you value your soldiers, if you want them to come home alive and sane, stay away from our colonies with high child populations, not because you can't beat us militarily, but because the victory will cost you more than you can afford to pay. The broadcast ended. Across the galaxy, military planners updated their strategic assessments. A new category appeared in threat matrices: human protective response, risk level, extreme, recommendation, avoid engagement when human children are present in conflict zone. General Karvoth watched the footage from Epsilon 7 in his private quarters. He saw the chaos, the improvised weapons, the terrifying effectiveness of civilians who had stopped caring about their own safety. And he thought about the small human woman who had stood in his war council chamber and warned him this would happen. She had saved his army, saved his reputation, saved him from making the worst tactical decision of his career. He pulled up his communication system and sent a message to Terran diplomatic channels, marked for Maya Torres. It contained 3 words. Thank you. You were right. On Epsilon 7, life slowly returned to normal. Emma Grant went back to her greenhouse, though she couldn't look at her sprayer equipment without feeling sick. Robert Chen taught his grandson how to finish the model spacecraft they had been building and tried not to think about what he had used the fuel cells for. Sarah Okonkwo returned to her classroom and read to her students and found herself checking the exits more often than she used to. They had won. They had protected their children. And they would do it again if they had to. But they hoped, desperately, that they would never have to. Because becoming the thing you needed to be to win that fight, it changed you. It showed you what you were capable of when pushed far enough. And knowing that about yourself, living with that knowledge, that was the real cost of victory. Maya Torres received General Karvoth's message a week later. She read it, smiled that sad smile, and deleted it. Then she packed her things and requested a transfer back to Epsilon 7. Back to her daughter, who loved dinosaurs and painting and had no idea how close she had come to danger. Back to the place where ordinary people had done extraordinary things, where parents had become warriors and warriors had become parents again, where humanity had proven, once and for all, that you really, really didn't want to threaten their children. The galaxy had learned its lesson, the hard way, and the Kresh hegemony issued a formal doctrine update, almost word for word identical to the one the Kresh pirates had filed years earlier. It read simply, "Do not engage human populations where juveniles are present. Risk assessment, catastrophic. Expected casualties, unacceptable. Recommendation, find alternative targets. Always."